Last week, I posted a poll on this channel asking which path to godhood would your Dungeons and Dragons character attempt to take. Lots of interesting comments, and as of filming this, it looks like starting a cult to gather worshippers is the preferred method. Now, this is part of a larger question of what do you do with a level 20 character? Hello everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent. Older editions of D&D, you could just keep leveling and acquire more hit points and magic items, and this is how we get adventure modules like the Throne of Bloodstone, a level 18 to 100 adventure. TSR, wondering where characters go and what they do after becoming so powerful on an earthly plane, created the Immortals set for basic expert D&D. And later on, in 3rd edition, the Deities and Demigods supplement was created and contained ideas on how to become a deity if that's where your players were headed. Now we're going to explore both of these paths and find out how you can become a god in Dungeons and Dragons. Basic, expert, companion, and master sets for Dungeons & Dragons. This was the precursor for advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It was distributed in supplements so new players could easily pick up the basics, and as your character leveled up, the idea was to buy the remaining sets. Basic took characters from levels 1 to 3, Expert took characters from 4 to 14, and next the companion rules supported levels 15 through 25, and the master rules would allow most characters to go from levels 26 to 36. Now this became well known as BECMI. Old D&D, you might see a lot of BX D&D or BECMI D&D, and that's referring to Basic Expert or Basic Expert Companions, Masters, and Immortals. All of these, except Immortals, were bundled together in the Rules Cyclopedia, which you can get a hardback cover for a pretty decent price on DriveThruRPG as print on demand. I'll put a link down below if you're interested. I enjoy mine, and it's a fun reference on my bookshelf. However, if you're serious about playing older edition D&D, I highly recommend Old School Essentials by Necrotic Gnome. They reorganized and fine-tuned the old BX rules to be easier to understand and play, and plus, it's really great art. Now, the Immortals set to Dungeons & Dragons was a way for player characters to transcend their heroic lives and become more or less a deity or a higher being. They were specifically called Immortals, but these could be viewed as deities. A character that reaches 36th level becomes aware of greater powers in the universe in the form of immortals, and they also become aware that these immortals were all once mortal themselves. Your character could take the journey to become an immortal, and it is clearly possible as there are other immortals running around this campaign setting. Now, there are 4 routes to take immortality known as spheres, and these spheres were linked to the 4 elements: earth, fire, water, and air. Each sphere gave your character specific purposes and powers, and although they had favored classes, you could choose any sphere that you wished. Sphere 1 is matter. It favors fighters and is aligned with earth. Sphere 2 is energy. It favors magic users and is aligned with fire. Sphere 3 is time. It favors clerics and is aligned with water. Sphere 4 is thought. It favors thieves and is aligned with air. And finally, there was a 5th sphere, but this was for non-player characters only. The Sphere of Entropy. It has no element associated with it except the void. Now, the purpose of a character from the Sphere of Entropy was to destroy everything in the multiverse, always making way for the new. You kept a lot of the skills, spells, and abilities you had as a mortal and gained new ones. The idea that regular mortal problems were not really an issue for you anymore. As a deity, more or less, you would fight evil, which is entropy, on a cosmic level. Flying through the multiverse, through space, you basically become Adam Warlock with the Infinity Gauntlet. Your immortal character can gain their own plane and make a home with 2 to 5 stars and 16 to 20 planets that orbit them. You can pull raw materials via the elemental planes and create life on a suitable world. Then, after creating your own world, that immortal could bestow all of their power to the home plane, protecting it with powers and be reborn as a mortal on the material plane. You get to start over as a new character without knowledge of your previous immortality, ready to play in a world of your own creation. Now, the actual path to take is a quest for the dungeon master's making. Your high-level basic expert character will need that awakening moment and follow the path of their sphere before being recognized as an immortal. Now, there are those who wish to help you, and there are those who wish to prevent this from happening. Flash forward to 3rd edition, D&D has changed a bit from the TSR days, and BECMI, Wizards of the Coast released Deities and Demigods, which was a collection and expansion of content from other D&D books and accessories. It was an informational supplement on deities in general and how to use them between various campaign settings. If you were to create your own pantheon for your own world, what would it look like? The book could help you. It gave you motivation for deities in a game, answering the questions of why do gods even care about mortals, or why would mortals worship gods? The big takeaway for me in this book was the divine power ranks and the methods of divine ascension. Wizards of the Coast didn't lay out specific paths to achieve godhood, but gave the dungeon master quest ideas on how a player could ascend. Through acts of good, through mighty deeds, or through theft and murder. The problem would be that becoming a deity in the Forgotten Realms would be very different than, say, Eberron. The route to become a god is different based on how your deities and pantheons are defined. Are divine beings simply born with divinity, the divine spark? Or do you earn your divinity through life accomplishments, like the Immortals box set? Can divinity be stolen? Is there a finite amount of divinity? Now, I can't answer all of these questions for your home campaign, but as a frame of reference and to continue this conversation, let's just apply this to the Forgotten Realms. From there, we can see how to become a deity in the realms. Now, the Forgotten Realms has Lord Eo, the Overgod, and this Overgod created the deities. So deities are born with a divine spark. They were divine beings the moment Lord Eo created them. However, this is not the only path, and we have learned that a divine spark can be stolen. Gods can die, and gods can return. The Overgod can also just grant any being divinity and elevate them to divine status. Now, I'm not sure if there is a finite amount of divinity. I don't think there is, but the idea of god portfolios suggests that you are stronger with more portfolios and certain portfolios. So in that instance, there is a finite amount of divine power that can be spread out. The two serious ways I see for a player to ascend would be complete some amazing quests that would gain the attention of the Overgod to bless you with divinity, or steal it from another god, which is the more interesting way. So let's go through the steps. To start a character on this path, you'll need to obtain a divine spark, and you can do that by defeating demigods. Demigods are the lowest of creatures with divinity. When you defeat one, you can take its divine spark, and if you collect enough, you too will be considered a demigod. Divine essence can be in a creature like a demigod, or it could reside in holy or magical items. There are certain artifacts within the Forgotten Realms that were created by deities and contain a bit of divinity. If you obtain these items, either equipping them or draining them, you can harness that sliver of divinity, adding it to your stockpile within your body. Now, the specific process to drain a divine artifact, I have no idea. That's something that you and your DM should come up with, but personally, I think it would depend on the item. A crystal shard gifted from a deity, maybe grinding it up and mixing it with holy water and drinking it in a church during the midday sun. If it's a weapon or a shield, maybe you melt it down using heat from the elemental plane of fire and mix it with the blood of a fey creature. After some protective flame spells, you bathe in the molten metal. So now that you have a spark of divinity, you have not only your class levels, but also a divine rank. With the smallest amount of divinity, you are considered to have a divine rank of 0. With a divine rank of 1, you are considered a demigod. And at this level, you may have some devotees or worshippers, but not many. Gaining more followers will definitely increase your divine powers, but you could also defeat more demigods. It kind of makes sense why you see so many cults in the Forgotten Realms. There are lots of beings trying to get divine power, and a few cultists is the best place to start. Now, worshippers have their own reasons for following you, but it usually comes down to one of 3 reasons: love, gratitude, or fear. Worshippers may truly love what you represent and worship you with an open heart. But perhaps you protect them or have protected them in the past and they worship out of gratitude.
Or fear. You could destroy them at the drop of a hat and they know it. Your worshippers pray to you in hopes that their servitude will avert your gaze.
They are grateful if you don't show up and will make offerings to keep you happy and away. They'll convert others to your religion because the non-believers could bring about your wrath. Shun the non-believers. Now, gaining worshippers is one path. You might also travel to the source of a god's divine power, to their home plane, and tap into that. Now, these quests could be epic. Your group can't take down Lolth directly, but if they figured out a way to siphon divine power from the demon web pits to your character, well, soon a full-on confrontation of godlike proportions would take place. Now again, with 5,000 votes on my YouTube poll, we have starting a cult as the preferred method for gaining divinity. In the Forgotten Realms, I think you'll eventually be pushed into attacking another deity. You have to get a portfolio. Remember, you'll be responsible for prayers, and I imagine the other gods of the Pantheon might not welcome you with open arms. A whole new game could appear, which isn't outlined in later editions of D&D, but like I mentioned earlier, it is in the Immortal set. So much like Lolth, take your divine self, retreat into a plane of your own creation, and emerge more powerful. Or become a lich, because that was popular too. Links to all this material can be found in the doobly-doo below. Thank you, patrons, for supporting the channel and reading all of my playtest material that I've been writing. How do you want to retire your level 20 character? Are you interested in Divine Ascension? Which path would you take? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you all